Beautiful. All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is, hi, Johnny. I saw that wave. Thank you for that. My name is Kristen Sowden, and I serve as our Associate Director for Career Advising and Programming. And this is another installation of our career series that we have started, our virtual career series. And I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce today Fernanda Oliveira. Did I say it right, Fernanda? I'm so sorry.
Yes, you nailed
I,
it.
I got it. Thank you. Thank you. Um, so Fernanda is a 2024 Penn LPS Online alumni. She started the program. She has an amazing history as a professional ballerina, came into our program, and has now launched into this tremendous career in law. And so today, of course, with our panel being law and life, I'm really excited for us to have a conversation about her experiences, both within the BAS program, but also as she transitioned to law school. I'm hoping we can talk about things like the application process and scholarships. And now she just finished her very first year. And so I'm really excited to hear more about that and to hear any advice you may have for students, Fernanda. So with that being said, we recognize that we've got a great group here and we're really excited about that. If you have questions for Fernanda, please feel free to pop those into the chat. Excuse me, Fernanda is not going to be looking at the chat, but I will be. So if you have questions and there's ways that we can kind of incorporate your wonderings in, I would love to do so. So again, with that all being said, thank you so much for being here, Fernanda. We are just so proud of you for a variety of reasons and very honored that you took time out tonight to be with us.
Of course, I'm so happy to do this, and it's so cool that there's so many people here.
Yeah, this is a good showing. This is a really good showing. So Fernanda, why don't we start at the very beginning? And I'm really hopeful that this is going to be an informal conversation tonight, that we'll hear more about Fernanda's experience and it honestly will be fun, right? It'll be fun to hear about all the successes that she has had. I'm going to pin you, Fernanda. So, okay, perfect. So, Fernanda, let's start off. Can you just tell us a little bit about what inspired you to pursue law after completing your degree, your BAS degree, and how the Penn LPS Online program prepared you for that? I know those are some big questions, so feel free to take them however you would like.
Yeah, great question. I did not join the program knowing I wanted to go to law school. So my initial intention was to go into clinical psychology. So my major at LPS was positive psych. Oh, it was data analytics and psychological sciences. Penn is the birthplace of positive psychology. It's got incredible people that know all about this very unique and cool area of psychology. Um, and I thought I wanted to be a researcher. I thought I was going to move on to get a master's or a PhD in psych. Um, and the reason I was interested in psychology was because I was working professionally as a ballet dancer for many years, and I noticed there was a lack of mental health support for dancers. We had all the physical therapy in the world, but not much support on the mental health side. And I wanted to try to fill that gap. So in my effort to sort of make be that person to help people access resources, I joined the Dancers Union as a representative. So I was very involved with collective bargaining agreements and negotiations. So I was working very closely with labor attorneys. And I fell in love with that work. And then to see the language that we worked on then become part of our contract as like binding language that people had to abide by was very inspiring. And then to see it help the lives of my colleagues and um, that's when I started to kind of shift my thinking and sort of realize that I didn't want to provide the service, but I wanted to help people access it. So that's when I started to think about law school. So that was about maybe 6 months into LPS that I started to think that my career might be going elsewhere, not psych, but law. Um, and there were a few moments, yeah, I think class interactions and even course topics that I remember now. This is a good exercise for me. I've been going back and being like, oh, how did that connect? And there were a few courses that I think helped me realize that about myself. Um, one that comes to mind right now is actually I think it was the positive psychology at work course where you learn like to make your leader journey and that can sound really cheesy and sort of not something you want to engage with, but when you actually embrace the work and you look at it with an open mind, it can really help you sort of situate yourself in your life and where you want to go. So I remember that being a helpful course for me personally, as well as professionally. But yeah, the shift happened while I was in school. And I think I should also mention I joined LPS as a transfer student. So I finished my associates with a community college and then joined in 2021 and finished the whole program, what was left for the last remaining credits in 3 years.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Fernanda, this idea. We love our community college transfer students. We find they are so full of passion and fire and focus, and they're ready to go. And so, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad that it was a successful transfer. I remember the first time you emailed me and said, I'm thinking about law school. I remember getting the message and you asking about, what does the application process look like and what suggestions do you have? So I feel like I was there for the very beginning. And I like
You
that it has evolved this idea of you talking about moving from direct service to accessing service. Like what a powerful moment. I know that I think about and talk about and teach about in BAS 4000 this idea of knowing yourself and knowing your values. And so I love that you were able to hone in on like, well, this is so important to me, but I want to be doing it from this angle instead of, being more on the direct service side of things. So brilliant. I love that. Thank you very, very much. What certificates did you get, Fernanda? What certificates did you earn?
so yes, I have my BAS in data analytics and psychological sciences, and I have
Yeah.
an advanced certificate in, well, a certificate in advanced positive psychology, because I think I
Got it.
did courses rather than four, in positive psych.
Okay. Yeah, hooray. Awesome. Okay, and I can see how that, the better understanding human well-being is probably a really important part of this journey as well, right? What does it mean to have well-being from an individualistic perspective versus a systemic perspective, which is certainly what you're working on a law, on a legal basis. So love that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about specific skills or knowledge that you got from the program that you felt really propelled you, maybe made you stand out a little, or that gave you some confidence as you were pursuing that law, as you were pursuing the law application. Like what about the BAS program was really distinguishing to you?
hmm I think in terms of substantive knowledge, the courses on data analysis, that's logic. That's all that teaches you how to think logically. I was very scared of it. I'm not a math person. I'm a humanities person all the way. But I wanted the analytical thinking, and I wanted to do research, so I needed to take it. And he helped a lot. And I think the LSAT is different now than when I took it. I think the logic games are out, but still, like learning how to get to from A to B to C when you're given these moving parts and trying to put them together and then remembering patterns, that's all, stuff you do in data analytics and stuff you do in the LSAT and in law. So that was in terms of just kind of things I learned in class that I think helped me along the way. I remember that very specifically. Yeah, so the cool thing about the way the program is, you get to meet people from all sorts of, all walks of life, all over the world. Um, we had grandmothers and we had, scientists scientists and a judge, just all sorts of people. And you learn how to talk to all sorts of people. You learn how to listen. You learn how to have different audiences to connect with, how to make an impact. With the way you connect with people. So it's that, that helps you with networking, that helps you with just understanding how human beings, interact. And that's a huge part of the law too. You can be a good lawyer if you don't understand people. Um, so I think there's a lot there that this program offers. And I think a lot of the conversations I've had in law school with students, who came from traditional undergrad programs have to do with that diversity that you get to experience in this program that not everyone gets. So it's pretty cool. And then the other thing too is because a lot of us have jobs and other obligations and other things going on, um, we have a lot to offer, a lot to talk about, like a lot that's interesting about us. So I think a lot of times it can be discouraging to not come from a traditional residential program going into law school, but it's actually, I found it to be an asset.
That is music to my ears for so many different reasons. I totally agree with you that I think one of the true strengths of this program is the diversity of student that it attracts. We have professional athletes. We have, as you said, grandmothers, right? I think the oldest student, I love to talk about this student, he was 79 when he graduated with his BAS degree. He had managed a Radio Shack his entire life for 29 years. And then decided to come back because education was important to him and he had not yet had a chance to do it. We've worked with folks who are living internationally. I mean, you name it, and uh, we have had a student who has done it in this program, and it creates such a fantastic classroom culture, which it sounds like you have really, you really cherished, Fernanda. But I love the way you talked about that as a strength in graduate school applications. And for law school, but also for graduate school, we have a lot of students who will come to me as a career advisor and say, I want to go to law school. Or graduate school. I might want to go to this very traditional looking graduate school. Am I going to be a good fit? And the answer is almost always yes, as long as it's for the right reasons, right? I think that, uh, as you said, people in this program are interesting and they come with these fascinating career stories and reasons for why they want to move forward with the careers that they do. And that is something that highlights you against a 22-year-old, right, who has lifeguarded all summer and hasn't really, kind of had this experience like so many of our BAS students have. So if I had answered that question, Fernanda, I would have totally said that, but coming from your lips was even better. So thank you for that. I really love that. And just a little bit of a tangent, but can you tell us about your experience with faculty that you had in the BAS program? Did you find them to be accessible and willing to help with law school? I already know the answer, but can you talk just a little bit about what that looked like for you?
Yeah, so that was a concern of mine coming into the program, right? Like you don't know how much you're gonna get to interact with professors in an online program, and it can be a little discouraging sometimes coming in knowing that there's so many people in class and you never see your professor in person. But I was thinking about this recently, and I'm in a class now with 85 other students, and I don't really get to talk to my professor as much. It's not, that idea of like a one-to-one or even like a small group discussion that you get to exchange ideas with your professor, that can maybe happen in like a small liberal arts college doesn't really happen in large groups in large schools. So I think no, you don't get the same interaction as you would in a small college, but you kind of get the same as you would in a residential program in a large university. So I don't find it to be that different, but you do have to be proactive about it. You do have to email professors or come to office hours. I think I was telling Kristen that I never miss an office hour. I was always there, mostly because I needed the clarification. But it's good to get that FaceTime with your professor, even if virtually. You really gain so much from that. And professors are so helpful. They want to connect with you. They want to see students. I think a lot of professors find that to be the most rewarding part of their jobs. So don't be shy about it. Like reach out, go to office hours, ask questions. That's like the whole point of this. So yeah, like that's my number one thing. Like reach out to people.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So when Fernanda and I had first had this conversation about doing this panel, I had asked, like, how was your faculty interaction? And of course, she said, similar to what she just shared. You get out of it what you put into it, right? I'm pretty sure Fernanda was exactly what you had said to me. And so if you are a BAS student early in your career right now, please take the time to get to know those faculty members, to do things like to come to office hours, just like Fernanda said that she did, to send them an email, to read their feedback. I can't tell you as an instructor, when I'm putting feedback in for students, I spend a lot of time doing it. And so I'm always appreciative when someone acknowledges that they've read it. Right? Or that they're taking it to heart or whatever that might look like. So, our faculty are a part of this program because they really love teaching and honestly, they really love our students. As we just discussed, we have incredible students with amazing stories. And so many of our faculty are really thrilled and refreshed by the idea of being a part of our program because they can work with these really cool, interesting students. So, if you're a prospective student, I encourage you to also consider how you can start building those relationships or what that timeline might look like for you. Particularly if you're considering going to graduate school, be it, whatever type of graduate program you are getting to. Fernanda shared with me, and I'm happy to let you talk about this too, Fernanda, but that she used two faculty members, I think, from Penn, right? And both were thrilled to write the letters and really happy to be a part of her story. But she put in the work. She had had the time to really get to know them. So start to plan those relationships early, knowing that they could be a great benefit to your to your graduate applications. Do you want to follow up on that, Fernanda?
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. It's important to do it early. Know that people are busy and they have lives. But one thing Kristen pointed out to me is that a lot of the LPS faculty, they're teachers first and maybe researchers next. So they actually have the time to build that relationship with the students, which is nice. That, a lot of the students in the residential program don't get. Um, but yeah, definitely reach out early and don't count people out, even if you're thinking, oh, I got really good feedback one time from a teacher's assistant that I chatted with and got to connect with. They might be willing to write you a really nice letter. So if you barely got to know a professor, but then you got great feedback, great report with an assistant, that could be really good. And I'm sure you've heard this for people who have been researching law school applications already. You've heard that it's better to have a letter from someone that knows you than someone who has a big name, and that's so true. Um, so definitely, don't count people out, or even if you think like, oh, they probably won't remember me. I thought that from one of the teachers I reached out to, and she was more than happy to write me a letter. So, yeah, I guess my lesson number two is don't count yourself out.
That's a good one for sure. Very nice. All right, so shifting gears a little bit, Fernanda, were there any challenges in the law school admissions process that you faced, particularly about being a non-traditional student or being an online student? What did that, and maybe can you just walk us through what your application process looked like? That's probably a good place to begin, if you don't mind.
Yeah, being a student in a fully online program was never an issue. I was warned by one admissions person early in the process that it could be potentially just because um, admissions people aren't familiar with it. So if they don't recognize the name of the school or the program, they might not know what your grade means when they look at your GPA or something like that. That's becoming less and less common now because there are great programs and people are getting to know Penn's program a little bit better. But that said, I don't think that affected me at all. Um, and I guess, sorry, you asked me about the application process.
Yeah, can you just walk us from like how many schools did you choose and how did you choose them and when did you take the LSATs and can you just kind of walk us through your process?
hmm I'm trying to remember. So much has happened since. Um, I think I started by reaching out to folks. Like the minute I started thinking, I think I want to go to law school, I think I emailed Kristen, I emailed people that I knew were lawyers. I don't have any lawyers in my family, so I started just kind of cold emailing folks like, hey, I'm thinking about this. Can we talk about it? And people want to help. People want to talk about their journeys with you. They want to help you figure things out. So again, don't be shy about reaching out to really see if that's for you, right? Like law school is a huge commitment. It's a lot of money and time, and it can be really miserable if that's not really what you want to do. So don't do it just to get a degree, but if you really want to do it, like definitely reach out, talk to people. Um, and then from there, I guess I started to kind of, there's so many resources out there where they can they break down a timeline for you, when to start studying for the LSAT, when to take it, when to apply. I remember I took the LSAT in September and I applied in November, December. So I waited, so I kind of studied. I started studying for about a year before, 8 months to a year. And then I took it once um, in September and I told myself that's all I had in me. A lot of people take it many times. That wasn't gonna be me. I hated it. Um, but it's better now. There's no logic games now. So that was my weak heart. Anyway. So you take it. So I knew I wanted to take it once, so I planned to take it in September. I think it happens 4 times a year, something like that. Um, you get the results a couple weeks later, and then you can start working on you start working on your personal essays as early as you can. A lot of resources at LPS can be very helpful. Like I said, some courses will kind of get you start thinking about your journey and how to present it. Your is it BAS 4000?
Yep, good memory. You got it.
That is a huge help too. It really gets you kind of because all of us have life stories, we have careers and lives and things to talk about. So it can be hard to pick what to put in your personal statement, right? So that can be super helpful to get you thinking about what story you want to tell about yourself in your essays. And then you want to apply broadly. I would say it depends on where your goals are and what your financial situation is, what your family situation is, if you can travel or not. So your list of schools, that's very personal to you. I was very lucky that I am married. My husband is able to work from different places. So I was able to apply to schools all over the country. I had my favorites, of course, but you never know how it's going to pan out. Um, so I think I applied to about 12 or 13 schools. Um, yeah, I started hearing back between December and February, March. I applied in November, December. Um, be mindful of scholarship deadlines. Definitely apply to all the scholarships. Write all the essays. Apply to all the scholarships. Don't count yourself out. That was lesson number one, I think. So yeah, don't do that. Um, yeah, just apply broadly. Write the essays. I know it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. You never know. I received scholarships that I thought I had a 0% chance of getting, but I was like, I have the template for this essay because I wrote it for the other school. Might as well send it, and it works out. So yeah, just apply and talk to people, figure out if the school's for you. Try to visit, like once you start getting um, your offers, try to go to the place and see how you feel physically in that school. See if it's for you. Um, yeah, those are the broad advice.
Yes. Beautiful. That was beautiful. Okay, so I want to quick dive in just a little bit more. There's a question about juggling studying for the LSATs with your coursework. If you're working, did you do some like specific type of study plan or timetable? I know LSATs was not your favorite part of this, but did you find any tips or tricks as you were walking through that helped it be a little more seamless? I heard you say you started about a year in advance studying.
I think so. I'm trying to remember. I think, yeah, I definitely started about a year and then took it more seriously like 8 months before the test. Um, I found it helpful to use an online platform. I think I started studying actually. Duolingo had a free resource at the time. I don't know if that's still available, but it was very helpful to kind of start to get used to the kinds of questions you're going to get in the actual exam. And I know I also take this with a grain of salt. This might be outdated advice at this point. But you want to give yourself time, especially for us that are working and whatnot. Um, I think I made a schedule for myself. I don't remember how long I put in my schedule to study for the LSAT, but I think I studied 5 times a week, every week, and for at least an hour. And then I think I increased it as it got closer, like 2 months before. You don't want to get too crazy and start studying you know, 6 hours a day because it's just you're not gonna be absorbing anything at that point anymore. It's not an exam you can cram for. So it's really just it's all logic. So you just gotta get used to the rhythm of it essentially of what the questions that are gonna be asked are. So yeah, that was kind of what I did. And in terms of school, I mean, it's just tough. But the nice thing about this program is that it's flexible, right? So you don't have to do your work in a classroom. So you can do it at home. You can do it. I did it at the theater between shows. So that I think it actually may be easier to be studying for the LSAT while at school when you're at LPS than in a residential program. So making a schedule for yourself is very helpful. Definitely use, your iCals and whatnot, color code it, make sure you follow it. I'm not great at it all the time, but it's helpful to kind of hold yourself accountable. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. That's wonderful. And then we know in terms of letter recommendations, you were telling me that it's usually between 2 and 5, but you had settled on the magic number of 3, right? Which I think is perfect. And I'm sure you asked those folks. So for those of you who are watching this, faculty really like at least a month in advance. If you can, I'm going to say please give them that. Hopefully, you know a month in advance that you're applying to law school, right? Especially if it's towards the end of a semester because so many faculty are caught up in grading. But 3 was your magic number, Fernanda, right? Okay.
Yeah, it seems to be the right amount. I
Yeah.
don't think people read more than three. I think less than three should be okay. Some schools only take two, so that's fine too. But if I think if you're gonna do two letters, you probably want one school, one work, something like that, just
Mhm.
to show the range of people that know you. And then if you're doing three, I think maybe two academic and one professional might be a good balance. But again, depends on your life and what you've done, and you can have it's very personal.
Mm. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you did 2 academic, 1 professional, correct?
Mhm.
And your 2 academic were both from Penn LPS Online?
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay. Yeah, I see a question about this idea of, forging a relationship with remote faculty members. I've actually had instructors tell me in our program that they talk more to their online students than they do to their in class or their brick and mortar students because you're in, you're out, right? But you're in an online class, you're getting emails, you're attending office hours, you're doing some type of asynchronous, whether it's like a harmonized discussion or a Canvas discussion or something, so that it's actually you're getting a lot more of that faculty connection than you are, which I think is what you were alluding to earlier, Fernanda. So I actually think to answer that question, it's probably the better of the 2 options, honestly, if there was such a thing. So Now, Fernanda, how did you decide what kind of law you wanted to practice? And then how did that help you settle into the schools that you were going to apply to? Because I think sometimes folks get a little lost in that choice as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. For me, I knew I wanted to be a public interest attorney, so I knew that I didn't want to do corporate law. Um, but I didn't know what, right? Like there's so much you can do in that. So I was like, maybe I want to do civil rights. Maybe I want to be a government lawyer. I don't know yet. So I'm still figuring that out at a year in. But I definitely am leaning towards civil rights litigation. Um, and I think the way I looked at it, honestly, I didn't think about that too much when I was in the application process because I kept being told you might change your mind. Like a lot of people do. They come in thinking they want to be antitrust attorneys and then they end up doing litigation for something else. It's very it's interesting how much, you don't know until you get to law school. So people usually will tell you not to get too kind of settled in your choice. But it's good to have an idea too of what you want to do, right? So for me, that I kind of had that going in. There were two schools that I felt that could be a good fit because of just the number of public interest students they had, and they were NYU and Michigan. Um, of course, very difficult schools to get into, so I didn't have high expectations for them, but those were kind of my dream schools. Um, and I did talk with a lot of people that applied or that attended those schools to, not a lot of people, but one person here or there that went there who knew about the vibe of the school, if that really was what I thought it was, or if it was just kind of what the PR of the school is, right? So that was helpful to kind of help me narrow down, like once I started receiving offers to see where I wanted to go. Um, but yeah, you just don't know initially how schools are gonna feel. I mean, it's I applied to all these schools. I was waitlisted from like a top 30 school and I accepted into a top 5 school. So it's you just really don't know what you're gonna get. So you have to be mindful of like maybe it's just not a good fit. Maybe the school doesn't, that's not really where you should be. So kind of be open-minded about it, but then at the same time try to speak with folks that have a little more information about the schools you're thinking of.
Thank you so much for sharing the idea of being accepted into a top five, but waitlisted at a top 30. Because I do think so many times I work with students who want to go to graduate school and they are looking for the exact formula to get in. And for better or for worse, there isn't one, right? It really has to do, I mean, of course, it has to do a lot with the applicant, but it also has so much to do with the school and what they're looking for. I love the advice of thinking really broadly about where you want to go and also giving yourself some agility and some grace in it, recognizing that, it's not this one perfect school that will make or break your career. So, although I will say, Fernanda, you could have had two Penn degrees.
I know.
Fernanda was accepted into Penn Carey Law, but chose NYU, and I think for all the amazing reasons. So, can we talk a little bit about this scholarship process? Because that's another question I get all the time, which is like, how do I find money to fund graduate education? So, I heard you say earlier, like, apply for everything, even when you're tired. Do you have do you want to expand on that, or do you have other thoughts about funding for graduate school? Or, of course, in this case, law school.
Yeah, for sure. You have to apply. Private schools will have a lot of money and they have lots of scholarships. Um, and you just have to find them and apply to them. Um, so that's the one thing. And then with public schools, I was at the time when I was applying, I was in international schools, so there wasn't that much funding from public schools I was able to get. So something to keep in mind too as you are, narrowing down or figuring out your strategy, is that it's like what schools can offer what I need, right? So definitely look at all the scholarship pages for all the schools you apply to. There are going to be many. And some of them you may think, oh, that doesn't quite sound like my thing. I don't think I have the exact type of letter of recommendation they're asking for. That was something I ran into. I was like, I don't think my letter speaks to exactly that. But well, who knows? And then you are, and they end up calling you and offering you a scholarship. So you just have to apply. Don't count yourself out. Um, and then the other thing too is some schools won't have scholarships, and Penn is one of them. They don't. They have tons of scholarships right away, but then they also have a bunch of scholarships you can't apply until you're already there. So like halfway through your first year, you can apply to this scholarship that can end up being almost like a full ride, but it's you won't know until you're already there. So that's something to keep in mind as well as you're kind of deciding between schools or you preparing your applications, is that, yeah, maybe I would have to pay a little bit more my first year, but then I can get this scholarship later and it will be okay. And then if you're like me and you're really set on doing public interest, as of today still, there's public interest loan forgiveness that schools do in collaboration with the federal government. So some schools are better than others about this. So definitely talk to the financial people in your school about it. But they have programs where the school will pay your monthly loan payment until you reach that 10-year mark if you keep working in a public interest organization or in government, or they will tell you what qualifies and what doesn't. So something to keep in mind too, as if you get into a great program that's like your dream program and you don't get the scholarship amount you want, but you want to do public interest, you're fine. Like you're gonna get a job, you're gonna be able to do it. Of course, I'm not a financial advisor, so don't run with this and tell people you're fine, you can just take the loans. No, but it's not as scary as don't let it be deter you from applying to like your dream program because there are ways that the school will work with you to figure things out. But that said, apply to all the scholarships.
And I will say, I've been doing this for like almost 15 years now. And that was the first time. Fernanda was the very first person to ever tell me about this public interest forgiveness that the federal government oftentimes works with law schools. So thank you, Fernanda, for sharing that because I feel like now I can pass that along. But the idea of like where there's a will, there's a way, I think is kind of what you've highlighted for us. And I can appreciate that if this is really what your heart is calling you towards, then let's apply for all the things and consider all the things and, find ways to make it happen. So thank you. Okay, just a couple more questions. And then, folks, if you have questions, please feel free to pop those in the chat and we can work in them towards the end here. Fernanda, I'd love to hear just like about how your first year and how it went, but also what you might have thought was the biggest adjustment that you had to make when transitioning from an online undergrad program to an in-person law school. Was there anything that you were like, whoa, I guess maybe commuting.
Yeah, having to pack books. Yeah, it honestly wasn't the biggest challenge, I guess, for me was being a full-time student more than being in person, because I hadn't been a full-time student pretty much my whole life. So that was an interesting adjustment because, I was like, oh, I just have to study. And of course, it's very hard, so you have to study a lot and it takes all your time, but it is an interesting shift to be like, oh, this is my focus now, and it's only this. Whereas school was never my only focus, so that was challenging. It was just different. Getting used to it took a while. But in terms of being in person, I think it was just exciting because you get to see people and um, yeah, be in a real classroom. And but I will say I got very uncomfortable because the classrooms are so, at least in New York, they're so small and everything, and I'm so used to kind of sprawling and having my desk, so it was kind of hard, but but it's all good. I don't think I had any sort of difficulty with it.
Hooray. That's good. Although I know you do have to commute. I was actually joking, but I really do know that you are commuting, and that probably is easier on some days than others, depending on the weather and what's going on in the city and yeah, all that good stuff. So, very nice. The way you explained it to me is first year of law school is really like core stuff, but this second year is going to be a little more of your choice with what you get to take, right? Can you talk? I would just be curious, like what are you looking forward to taking? Like what is coming for you that you're really excited about?
Yeah, first year of law school is definitely you feel like you're under a water hose, and it's just they're throwing so much doctrine at you, and it's a lot to take in. It's exciting because you're learning so much about the law, but it is definitely scary and exhausting. The second year you get to choose some things, so I'm very excited. This year I'm going to be interning at a judge's chamber, so getting to see how litigation works in real life with federal cases. So that will be very exciting, especially this time. Um, and I'll get to be a little bit more hands-on. This summer, I'm already working and helping with litigation strategy for a women's organization here in Philadelphia. It's been so rewarding and so great. I'm studying disability law and civil rights law this fall, just stuff that I've been wanting to study for since I joined law school. Um, yeah, so it's lots of things that I'm looking forward to. I'm not looking forward to exams. So that's the thing about law school. Um, that sucks. Your only grade is your final exam. So you don't know how you're doing. Like some schools, I guess, will have midterms, but you have no idea. You just read all this stuff and you have to prepare for cold calls. And you just, for 6 months or 4 months, you don't know how you're doing until you have the exam. So it really sucks. But I have some classes coming up where I have to write an essay and there's no exam. So that will be so great. So looking forward to it.
I would so much rather write an essay than take an exam.
Same.
Yeah, yeah. And I imagine, we were talking about like challenges. So in undergrad, you get a decent amount of feedback, right, from faculty and lots of opportunities to practice and even in more, I don't want to say light courses, right? But grading light courses, right? Maybe there's like a midterm and a final, but like it's still different. So I imagine that was probably a big shift. And I would have probably, like you, felt whew, like that was a heavy load to be carrying for an entire semester. Do law schools have office hours? Like, is there a way that you can kind of is that a way that you can kind of tell what's going on with your grades? That's a genuine question that I don't know the answer to. Okay.
No, that's a great question. Yes, you can do office hours with your professor or with the TAs. And you can do them for different reasons. Like with your professor, you get to know the professor and they learn your name and maybe you can build a relationship. But with the TAs, usually they're better at breaking things down for you. So if you have questions about the substantive law, it might be better to go to the TA, especially if the professor already explained it and you didn't get it. So yeah, so there's office hours and I'm there.
You have upheld the tradition of being at office hours. I love it. I love it. We talk about in the liberal arts, so often people, again, like in my career world, will talk about like, well, what skills am I getting from the BAS program? You're getting a bunch, but perhaps the most important is reading, writing, thinking, communicating, right? Like we really in that liberal arts tradition feel so strongly about the timeless human, capacity to read and write and think and talk and share that with orally in written. And so I hope that the experience, I'm guessing, I'm knowing that the experience you had in the BAS probably really lended itself really well because you were already in this tradition of doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of writing, doing a lot of thinking and communicating. So that makes me excited. Okay, I have one last question for you, and it's kind of like a twofer. So I guess the first part is if you could go back to yourself as a BAS student at the very, very beginning of your program, what advice would you give yourself to get through that career, or even maybe as a prospect, kind of whatever you feel more aligned with? And then, what advice would you give, like, to the folks who are here tonight who might be thinking about law school? You gave your two pieces. Is there any other pieces of advice that you would give? But let's start with you and what you might share with yourself very early on in your time here at LPS Online.
Hmm, that's a good question. I think maybe it took me a little too long to start reaching out to professors, and you feel so intimidated and it's hard. But I should have just done it right away. I guess the professors that I took the first classes with when I enrolled in the program, I probably didn't communicate with as much as the ones I later on. So yeah, maybe getting to know professors a little bit better, just reaching out, getting to know their research, or yeah, just getting to know. There's just so many incredible people you're gonna see. At LPS. And then so that's the advice. And then for folks thinking about law school is definitely the thing is people want to help you and but they don't know how to help you if you don't tell them. And sometimes you don't even realize you're doing this where you know you want to do something or you're interested in something. Um, but you just kind of like, don't want to talk about it yet. And but when you do, the person that's listening to you may remember that you said, "Oh, that person mentioned they're thinking about law school," and then there'll be a dinner with the dean of students at Harvard, and they'll be like, "Oh, can I put you in touch with that person that wants to go to law school?" And that's what networking is, but it sounds like such a scary word and such a like kind of weird like skeezy, term. But it's literally you just telling people what you're interested in, and then people genuinely are want to be helpful. That's what I found, and I had a lot of help. So don't be shy about what your interests are, what you're thinking about, even if it's just at the starting stages. Tell people about it because you never know who they'll tell or who they'll put you in touch with and what can grow from there. Um, yeah, so that's like my big one. Like be vocal about things you're thinking of.
Thank you for that. This idea of networking, and I even myself, right? If I see a flyer for a networking event, I cringe a little. I'm like, oh, that feels awkward, right? Because I think especially so many of us are conditioned to not want to boast about ourselves or something. And networking isn't that. Networking is literally talking to someone and sometimes talking about them. I can't tell you how many great conversations I've had with folks by just being like, how did you get to where you are? And it being this very cool, people love to talk about themselves. They love to give back, especially folks who are really advanced in their careers who don't always get an opportunity to have like the feel good moments with students. They love that. And so, like, if you can strike up a conversation with, the person checking you out at the grocery store, you can network. You just have to talk to them and start a conversation. And like you're saying, Fernanda, it's not like I'm planning to apply to law school in fall 2027, right? Like I'm thinking about law school. I'm really passionate about workers' rights and law school is a way that I've considered, helping change the world. That's it. That's it. And then you kind of start this whole conversation. So oh my gosh, Fernanda, thank you. I just that I just cherish you and so grateful that you chose Penn LPS Online for your undergraduate degree. We do have a question in the chat. This is from Shannon, and Shannon says, "Can you remind us of the courses you took you found particularly valuable? I think you mentioned positive psychology at work. Were there any others?"
So I guess valuable for law school application or valuable for just life? So I guess I can answer both ways. I think the positive psychology at work was particularly valuable for career transition. I think that one everyone should take. Um, and the data analysis. So even if you only take one, like the intro to data analysis, if you don't want to do anything with that, which I don't really do anything with data analysis these days, but it's very good for learning how to think logically. and to kind of challenge yourself in that way, especially if you're a very humanities person. So it kind of like stretches your brain in that way. So definitely a data course, the positive psych at work, and then on a like personal growth slash most wonderful class in the universe, definitely Professor Coleman's um, course on digital literacy. I don't know if it's still called that, but he is an absolute hero, and everyone should take his class. Um, I can type it in the chat just so people know. Yeah, there it is. Thank you.
Yes. Dig Seed 1200. That's right. For those of you who, Dr. Clayton Coleman teaches in our program, he was just, I told Fernanda, he was just awarded a teaching, like a school-wide teaching award, this past year. And we know it was so well earned. We're really, so yes, for folks who are in the program, if you can find a way, yay, yes, if you can find a way to take a class with him, please do. Please do, yay. Here's another question for you, Fernanda. Do law school professors allow prospective law students to sit in on a class to see what it's like a shadow? Is there any shadowing?
That's a great question. I think some professors do. I think they do need to kind of go through the school. So if there's like a professor that you know or heard of that you're interested in sitting in, I think you just reach out and they like work with you on contacting the school to figure it out. Like I don't think you can just show up, but I think if you reach out to the professor. And then I know that when you are accepted into schools, they'll have like admitted student days where they will invite you to come into the school. And a lot of times that will involve sitting in a class. So definitely like once you are accepted, but before you're accepted, I think you can reach out. I remember actually, I reached out to someone, to the dean of students at Penn when I was living in Philly, and I was just reached out with an email about my intentions and whatnot, and she was super sweet, and said this is a possibility. And I never took advantage of it because it just didn't work with my schedule, but I think people are open to it. You just got to reach out and see what the channels are there. Um, but yeah, that's a great question. It's a good way to get to know the school too.
Very nice. Are there any other questions that folks have?
I'm just gonna add one thing
Please
um,
do.
that um, Kristen was such a huge help during the application process. Like I know how stressful the personal essay is, and it's like your whole life, and it's also scary to have somebody read it because you're trying to be vulnerable and and whatnot. So it is like it feels awkward to reach out and have someone read it, but it was so, so helpful. And you need someone to read your stuff because you can't judge it that objectively. So definitely use your resources. That's number 4 3. I don't know where we are, but use your resources. And Kristen is a fantastic resource and is there for you. So yeah, definitely
That is very kind.
let
Thank
her
you,
help you.
Fernanda. Thank you. I remember reading your essay and being like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So, yeah, yeah. All right. Well, Fernanda, again, thank you so much for your time, for all the things that you have done for Penn LPS Online, for being so willing to share your story with us tonight. And thanks for showing us what's possible. Like, thank you for taking this amazing life that you have created and, bring it to us to share. That's just I feel very humbled. As you know, I've told you, I just feel so humbled to be a part of your story. So. All right, folks. Well,
That's
that's
too
all. Fernanda, I'm sorry. Go
great.
ahead.
I was just saying this was great, and these are such great questions. And I don't know what the rules are, but happy to talk to folks offline if anybody wants to email me. I know it's a stressful process, and again, I had a lot of help, so I'm happy to, yeah, talk to people and help you in your journeys.
Oh, very nice. All right. Thanks, everyone. We have this recording. I'm actually going to stop it now, but if you want to rewatch it so you can continue to get some gold, we'll have it posted soon. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.